Hey, what's up folks? How's it going? This is Waj. Hope you guys are all doing well. So for the past couple of weeks, I've been testing out this drone over here. This is the Yuneec Typhoon H. We did a comparison between this drone and the Phantom 4. Definitely check out that video if you haven't done so already. But I wanted to do a full review on the Typhoon H because I think it offers definitely a lot of cool features that's not available in other products, especially at this price range, such as the 360-degree camera, as well as the retractable landing gear and dual operator support. So what I wanted to do is kind of talk about the stuff that I liked and disliked about this aerial photography drone to see if it's right for you. So let's get right into it. Now, from a styling perspective, I do like the overall look of the Typhoon H. As you can see, it has a 6-rotor design, and you can actually collapse the prop arms themselves to get a more compact form factor. But even in its folded position, it's still pretty hefty, measuring about 350 millimeters by 269 millimeters at about 254 millimeters in terms of its height. So it's definitely not as compact as some of the other drones in this category. And one big caveat is the huge controller that this comes with. The ST16 ground controller kind of negates all of the portability factor of this entire platform, and eventually you're going to have to get a fairly large carrying case for everything to make the transportation of the unit safe and secure. Now you can see that the prop arms and the landing gear are made out of carbon fiber rods, which is definitely going to make things as strong and as durable as possible, but the actual connecting points and hinges to everything are definitely a little bit more vulnerable and could be a weak point in the event of an accident. And speaking of accidents, there are a number of safety features built into the Typhoon H, namely the ultrasonic obstacle avoidance system, which is going to use sound waves to detect objects coming into the drone's pathway. It's a fairly rudimentary system, and it doesn't really detect or recognize different hazards in the environment. It basically stops if it detects a large object in front of it, and it'll even fly backwards in the event of objects moving towards the drone. But again, there's no obstacle avoidance system looking at the back, bottom, and above the drone. So it's vulnerable in many different areas. And of course, compared to the computer vision optical system we have on the DJI Phantom 4, this system is fairly rudimentary. It doesn't find alternate pathways, and it's not as advanced as the system we find on the Phantom 4. Interestingly, since the Typhoon H is designed to be upgradable, there will be an option later down the road to have Intel RealSense obstacle avoidance system as an add-on attachment. That, of course, will be an extra cost on top of the existing platform. Now, interestingly, the drone can actually operate with just 5 rotors, so if one of the props stop working for whatever reason, you can still fly it back to safety and retrieve the unit. Now, the Typhoon H delivers solid battery performance for just around 20 minutes of a real dynamic flight time, which is definitely good. Perhaps not as good as some of the DJI products out there, but relatively competitive compared to the other drones out there. The only caveat I have is with the long excessive charge times. It takes just about under 2 hours to charge the battery fully, and it takes about 8 hours to charge the ST16 controller. Additionally, finding out the exact battery levels is a little tricky. There is no indicators on the battery itself. You have to turn on the ST16 controller and find out how much juice is left onto the drone, which can definitely be annoying because the controller takes around 30 to 45 seconds to boot up, and to actually get the live feed up, it takes almost another 45 seconds, which is definitely a pain. So startup time is very, very slow on this unit and needs to be improved quite drastically. Now let's talk about the controllers that you get with the Typhoon H. It comes with the ST16 controller, which is a large Android tablet that has the radio controls all integrated in. It's a fairly large package, but kind of cool how you have everything all in one unit. For more simple operations, and if you want the drone to follow you without lugging around this huge controller, it actually comes with this wizard remote system, which you can pocket, and the drone will kind of follow you wherever you go, and you can do simple point-to-flight fly commands, as well as do basic maneuvers with this little unit, which is definitely nice and convenient. There is no live subject tracking like we have on the new Phantom 4s, so in order to basically for the drone to follow you, it needs to rely on the GPS signal that's being emitted by the two controllers. Now, flying the Typhoon H is relatively easy. It's fairly stable at kind of medium to high altitudes, but at lower altitudes and areas where you don't have a GPS signal, because there is no ground positioning system, it is going to give you a lot of hover deviations, and it's going to be a little bit tricky to fly under 5 to 10 meters. So definitely be careful around those altitudes. But once you're up in the air, the drone handles like everything else, and it feels very maneuverable and fairly nimble. Now, the controller itself, as we mentioned, is actually running an Android based operating system. It's not fully licensed Android, so you can't actually go to the Google Play Store, but you can browse the web and you can even edit your videos. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, there is no remote download connection to get your footage from the drone to the controller itself. So if you want to review your footage, and there's no live catching like we have on the DJI Go app on the Phantom drones. Additionally, the piloting interface is not as well organized, as thought out as some other drone platforms. Definitely could use a little bit of polishing up to get you a more user-friendly experience. And one of the big problems with this platform is the firmware upgrades are basically going to have to be done manually. So you're going to have to download them off your computer, load them off an SD card, and then install them directly into the controller, which is definitely inconvenient. For whatever reason, the application uses the Wi-Fi connection to connect to the camera and cannot be used simultaneously to get access to the internet. Hopefully some of these issues will be fixed in future firmware upgrades, but right now it's definitely a pain to upgrade the software and firmware for the entire system, which is definitely a critical thing. On the plus side, the actual live footage that comes from the drone to the controller itself is relatively nice. You got 720p at 30 FPS with a minimal overall latency, even at extreme distances. The maximum communication range, by the way, is about 1 mile or about 1.6 kilometers. Now, the Typhoon H employs the CGO3 Plus camera, which is mounted on a 360-degree 3-axis gimbal. It's a 12 megapixel sensor that can shoot 3840 by 2160 at 30 FPS, as well as 1920 by 1080 at 120 FPS, which is awesome if you want to do a little bit of slow motion. The maximum bit rate is around 50 megabits per second for 4K video, which is relatively low for 4K quality. Typically, you want above 100 megabits per second. And generally speaking, taking a look at the footage itself, there is quite a bit of artifacting and over sharpening effect that happens if you use the standard presets. If you shoot in the more flat, kind of raw picture style, you can definitely get more out of your image, but relatively speaking, the camera is not as strong as what we find in other aerial photography units. Certainly not as good as the camera on the Phantom 4, in my opinion. The lens perspective is about 14 millimeters, about 35 millimeter equivalent, and it's a little bit wider than the Phantom 3 and Phantom 4 cameras, but not quite as wide as a perspective like you would get with a GoPro camera, which will definitely give you a lot more lens distortion compared to what we have over here. And even though there is still a little bit of a barrel distortion here and there, it's not going to take away too much from your aerial photography footage. But for people that want to shoot professional videos, the camera may not be up to par with them, especially if they're going to do broadcast standard quality. And since you have the option for a dual operators where one person will be piloting the drone and the other one will be controlling the 360 camera, I just don't think that the camera quality justifies that capability. Thankfully, later down the road, you can probably upgrade the camera or even buy the Typhoon H standalone and then put your own 360-degree gimbal or your own camera that meets its specifications for flight. But that will definitely be an exciting option once that becomes a reality. But overall, I think the Typhoon H definitely has a lot of interesting features. Many aspects of the drone definitely need to be improved, and hopefully with the next iteration, we'll see those improvements. I still don't think from a recommendation standpoint, it's as good as the Phantom 4 for me personally, but definitely still a lot of value for the price point that it comes at. But really on that, guys, that's really it. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Check out the description down below for all the detailed information about everything we talked about. And thanks again for watching. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you later. Take care.